everybody, this is Kevin of Bear Creek Honey. Today we're going to be talking about thermodynamics in a beehive and how it affects your wintering of bees. The way you design your winter wraps and your winter insulation for your hives. Now, I want you to do me a favor, and I want you to go to the uppermost portion of your home. This is my upper portion of my home. This is my upper bedroom that I built, and I converted an attic. And what I want you to do is I want you to stand there. Now I'm assuming now this video obviously is for the northern beekeepers. You know, Mason-Dixon line forward. Pretty much, because down south you don't have near the winter that we do, or the length of winter that we do. So I want you to stand in your uppermost room and look up at the ceiling. And I want you to tell me what you see. So that's my ceiling, drywall. And it's warm to the touch and dry to the touch. And the reason for that is because there is insulation directly on the other side of that space. And like a beehive, if you install insulation directly from your lid down to your uppermost, let's say, inner entrance, solid insulation foam board, your hive will not have the condensation shock that some beehives have. Now, as they say, moisture is the number one enemy. Moisture is the number one enemy of a beehive. And a house, moisture is the number one enemy of your home as well. And the two are very, very similar. We as humans, you live in a house, you expel moisture from your body, from your breath. We give it off in our sweat, in our breath. We take showers, we wash dishes. We're constantly putting moisture into the air, and it has to go somewhere. And usually you have vents in your kitchen and your bathroom to exhaust these types of things. But from your body walking around your house, what usually happens is the moist air condensates on cold surfaces. And where is the coldest surface in your home? It is your windows. And that's exactly where the condensation occurs, because your windows are very, very cold. Your windows are very, very cold. And you have moist, warm air hitting this cold surface, and it will condensate on that surface. A beehive is absolutely no different. And what will happen is when the beehive moist air from the bees raises up, it hits the cold roof of your hive, condensates, and it will drip down. If it's on the ceiling of your hive, it will drip down, and it will affect your bees, and it will kill a hive. Moisture, condensation dripping down on bees will kill them. Condensation on the walls of the hive, not a problem. The bees will actually consume that condensation. They need moisture a little bit, just like during the summer months when they go out and hit your pools and your bird baths and whatever they can find in ponds to soak up some water. They need the same kind of water, but having it landing on them, cold water, not good for a cluster of bees. But this is what you're trying to avoid. You're trying to avoid the condensation on the lid. And I'm going to take you outside to my hives, and I'm going to show you how insulation works for your hives. And like I said, ventilation, insulation, everything works together to cool your house. Now, obviously on my ceiling, I have insulation piled up above it, and then I have an open space from there to the roof deck. In a perfect world, I have cross ventilation coming through, and that will keep any moisture out away from condensating on my roof deck. In an ideal situation, at least in a house anyways, is that whatever's above the insulation is the same temperature and moisture content as what is outside. You don't want moisture air rising, getting out of your house. Houses are wrapped so tight these days because behind here there's plastic, and behind the plastic is your insulation, and the houses are wrapped so tight moisture can't really escape. That's why it condensates on windows and things like that. Beehives are really no different. So let's go outside. We'll take you out to my apiary, my home apiary, and we'll take a look at the insulation system and the ventilation system on my hives, and see if you can possibly see if this can help you in keeping your bees dry during the winter. Hi everybody. So I wanted to do a short little video here, very short. It's December 8th, 2018. It's 0 degrees outside in central Wisconsin. And I just wanted to do a short little video on understanding sort of the thermodynamics of a beehive. And it's actually not much different than understanding the thermodynamics of your own home. If you're in the northern climates like I am in central Wisconsin, you know, you're in the middle of winter. Well, not quite in the middle, but you're getting into the heart of winter here. The heart of the beginning. December 21st coming up pretty quick, which is the shortest day of the year. But like a house, a beehive acts in the exact same way. If you were to stand in the middle of your house on the upper floor and look up, obviously you'll see a ceiling up there. Now what you probably don't see, even though you have snow on your roof and it's cold outside, bitter cold, is condensation on your ceiling. And the reason for that is because you probably have some good proper ventilation, and you also have insulation directly on the ceiling of your home. Now, like in a beehive, it kind of acts in the exact same way. We have a lower entrance right here, and we have an upper entrance right there. Now, on this beehive, you can kind of see that 0 degrees this morning, but you can see all the frost built up right there on the edge there and at the opening of the upper entrance, and that is exhausting all the warm, moist air out of the hive. Now, up at the top here, if you can see that, I have a 2-inch foam insulation directly in contact with my lid. Okay, so there is there is no airflow between the lid and the insulation. So warm air that's rising up in the beehive, it's coming up, but it's not hitting a very cold surface. It's warmed up that insulation up there, and it's actually, you know, almost the same temperature as it is inside the core of the hive. Probably in the, you know, 90 degrees or so on the inside. I have no idea actually. On the outside of the cluster, it's probably in the 70s or something, 60s or so. Probably even lower than that as it gets in. But in the cluster itself, it's maintains 92 degrees. But what it's not doing is it's not being, the warm air rising is not being shocked by hitting a very, very, very cold surface, which would be the lid in the wood. If you have an air gap, you're going to have condensation. Now, I saw one of the beekeepers out there, and he put up a Valdi board with burlap, and I love his videos. Actually, he's quite humorous, and he's quite anal about his hives, and he's very, very good at what he does. But I think he's overdoing it a bit. You know, he's got the Valdi boards with the vent, and he's got the burlap, and then he had the covers on, and then he was pulling the covers off and showing how damp the burlap was. Well, yeah, then that's because there is air gaps between his lid and the burlap. So if he were to just remove the Vivaldi board and just put a single block of insulation on top, he wouldn't have that issue. What he went and did instead was he built a intricate lid for his lid of solid foam insulation, which in itself will help him in a long run, but it was overkill, in my opinion. Now, I'm a home inspector by trade, and I understand thermodynamics in a home, and a bee house is in itself a home. But a much, much simpler system is to put this solid insulation. It doesn't have to be solid insulation, but solid insulation doesn't absorb moisture. So I've got 2 inches of insulation, solid insulation, underneath this lid. So there is no shock to the warm air coming up and meeting that insulation. So it comes up, it hits that, it actually hits the inner cover. It actually hits the inner cover, but the inner cover is in direct contact with the insulation. So it's not cold by any stretch of the imagination. And then the air flow comes up, and then it just vents out, and then you see this on very, very cold mornings. You see the frost build up on the entrances, and that's like that with all my hives. Actually, you can come over here, and you can see on this hive, you can see the upper entrance is almost actually closed with frost. Now it's gonna, sun came out in about, it'll get up to about 15 degrees. This will actually just melt away, and it'll go back to venting as usual. So I don't really worry about that closing off, as it were. I saw bees coming out today. It's funny, this hive right here has actually got a vented bottom, and it's a very healthy hive. And I pulled this cover off. This has got, you see the insulation. I popped the insulation, just lifted the insulation, and I've got a hole on the top of my inner cover, and all the bees were at the top. They were right there at the top, and the cluster dropped down from there. This is actually a super to here, and then a deep underneath, and they were all up here in the super. Whatever. It doesn't really matter as long as they're healthy. But the funny thing is that this is my only hive with a vented bottom, and you can tell the difference. I have very, very few bees that have come out, broken cluster, to come out and die, because I think because the bottom board is actually very, very, very much colder, obviously, because it's vented. It's vented. So I think the bees just pile up in the bottom rather than making it out. I think they drop down, and it's so cold down there that they don't really make it out. So they pile up in there more than this hive here, which is a solid bottom. And they've been coming out fairly regular to come out and die. That's actually since yesterday. That little pile of bees there, it's my boot print from yesterday. But I just saw one. It's 0 degrees out, and I just saw a bee come out about 15 minutes ago. Come out, drop to the ground, and squirm around and die right there. He just flew out, landed right down there, squirmed around and die, and I'll show a little clip of that here shortly. But
look at this, it's 0 degrees out, and that bee just flew out of this hive. There he is. Struggling and dying. I mean, he just, that bee just popped out. It's 0 out, you know. And here's my upper entrance. They were coming out of here as well. I think there's a bee right there that's frozen dead up there, the upper entrance. Quite a few bees came out yesterday, I see, on this hive to die. But you can see them all over here, and you know, they've flown out quite a ways here. You know, dead one's there, dead one's there, dead there, dead there, dead out there. Just amazing to me. But this is what they do, and they still come out when it's that cold. They would rather come out here and die rather than clog up the hive. So when it's time for them to go, it's time for them to go.
Again, I just wanted to show you how the thermodynamics were working on these hives. Now again, like I said, I popped that lid off just to look at the bees. The bees were already at the top, and they were content. They're sitting literally right there. And if it was cold here and it was dripping water, they would not be anywhere around that, because that is the #1 enemy of a cluster of bees. So that's how I know that this is working, and working rather well. Also, when I popped it up, it was bone dry. The insulation was bone dry, so there was no condensation building up on that insulation whatsoever. So I just wanted to do a quick video showing how hives and your home are quite similar. Now, I got a home inspection background, so that gives me a unique perspective on how homes work. Now, I've been in plenty of attics in my day, and sometimes you actually see condensation on the roof deck on very, very cold days, and that is from actually warm, moist air gets into the attic and condensates right on the roof deck itself, and that's not a good sign. You have poor ventilation in your home. I hope you learned a little bit about how beehives function, and how you don't really have to get overly elaborate to keep your bees content during the winter. You know, I got a wrap on them just to keep a little bit of insulation so there's not quite the thermal shock. It provides a little bit of a wind barrier for any cracks in the hives or anything like that. Keeps the wind from affecting the hives. But you know, I don't think you really need these big, elaborate, 2-inch thick black plastic wraps. I think that's overkill in my opinion. You know, time will tell. Last year I lost 3 of my hives. The only thing I had on them was black tar paper, but they died due to varroa infestation and not due to the cold. You know, I checked them in February, and there was not much of clusters left on each hive. They were still alive, but the clusters were so small, they literally couldn't break a cluster anymore to go and move the cluster down to get any more feed. So they ended up starving out because the cluster was so small. So you'll live and learn about that as well. Varroa. So I did the mite treatment with Apivar this fall for 42 days, and that was my mite treatment for my hives. But anyways, that's it. Long winter. Hope you learned something. If you got any questions, comments, leave them below. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up. And subscribe to the channel. And I love to hear comments. I love to hear improvements that people have done. Or if you disagree, that too. I'm always learning, but until next time, happy beekeeping.